mentioning, I'm Hillary, by the way, I'm the program head of MAEEC, that, we're not just here on the land, that especially in this program, we really, encourage and foster a relationship, a relational experience with lands and waters and sky and peoples, so that we learn from, our human and our non-human teachers, our more than human teachers. So for this program, especially, this is really, part of our teaching. This is part of our teacher. This is our teacher as well. And we really deeply respect the teachings that have been passed on to us, especially from, Dr. Clarence Butch Dick. And he tells us that his dad said to him, when we take care of these lands, they'll take care of us. And that kind of echoes Robin Wall Kimmerer's work, that we're in this beautiful reciprocity. And that's what this program is predicated on. Okay, you can carry on. I hope I don't interrupt like this the whole time, because we'll never get through this. But I just thought it bears mentioning, maybe. Yeah, okay.
Awesome. Thank you. So the reason we're here, folks, of course, is for our conversation today with Dr. Liza Ireland and Glen Thielmann, who are both associate faculty in the MAEEC program, which is a Master of Arts in Environmental Education and Communication. So our conversation today will be on curriculum that responds to the world. And of course, Hillary's introduced herself. So I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Hilary Layton as well, who's a professor, program head, and research lead for the program. And as I said, my name's Ariana. I'm an education specialist here at Rural Roads and Student Recruitment.
And Ariana, you are going to be at Take Me Outside this week in
I
Banff,
sure am.
representing
Yeah,
this program.
absolutely. So if you're at the Take Me Outside conference, I'll be heading there mid this week to the weekend in Banff. So it'll be wonderful. Super
Perfect.
excited. Yeah.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Of course, you're welcome. Just a brief agenda for today here, folks. So I'll do just a couple slides on the Rural Roads experience. Of course, we're here for our conversation, so that will take up the majority of our time today. We'll provide a few program details at the end, as well as some admissions information, how to apply if you have any questions. And again, like I said, feel free to pose any questions throughout in the chat, and we're happy to respond to you. Just a few quick slides, photos here on our space, rather. So we have a photo of Hatley Castle. That is a National Historic Site here that we have on campus. So it's been in many movies like X-Men, Deadpool, blockbuster films. So if you've seen that building before. We also have a variety of gardens and green space, of course, beautiful trail space. You'll see a photo just to the right of our Japanese garden. There's also a photo of our Esquimalt Lagoon. So that's a migratory bird sanctuary that we have here on campus. And then our online and blended learning styles, which we've been doing for well over 25 years now. So the bottom right, just a homage to that as well.
Isn't that amazing? Over 25 years.
Yeah.
Right? When some people didn't even have computers, like
totally.
I know home computers. I know. Yeah, it's great. I think we better say 30 years now.
Yeah, right. I guess we have to upgrade that.
Keep going. Yeah.
Totally. We're also proud to be, of course, a certified Changemaker campus from Ashoka U, which is an approach that prepares students as they address world problems, encourage others, and act for the good of all. Hillary, do you want to say anything about that before I continue?
Oh, well, it's just, I just remember when we were applying for the Ashoka U status and we looked at our graduate certificate. We're not going to talk about this today, but our graduate certificate in sustainable community development, because we were working on live cases with the City of Victoria, and we were doing such incredible on-the-ground work with the city. And, when we circled back to them the next year and said, well, should we do some other projects? And they said, absolutely. And I said, we don't want to go back to some of the cases that we were working on. They said, no, we've done all that. So our research was not only research that mattered, but it was applied right away. It was just something really beautiful that we could contribute to the city. So Ashoka feels like kind of a service where, the learning is in service of something greater than just getting a degree or just the individual or even just the program itself. So that was just one example, but most of our programs are kind of examples of that. We try to have that, leaning right into, and which leads us to this conversation today, curriculum that responds to the world. So we're not sitting back on our laurels. Look at that. Slide, segue, pay the woman. Beautiful. Well done.
Take it away.
But it is true, because it's, it really is that we have to be responsive. because that's our duty as faculty, is not only to, bring share what we have learned, and kind of spread that out on the feast table of learning, but also bring in these conversations that are so critical right now, so that learning isn't something separate from real life. I mean, I think John Dewey said that about 120 years ago, but it's really quite important that the learning is real, and we get a sense of how it matters from a personal perspective, which our students always say, as well as a planetary perspective. And that's not lofty. That's actually how that kind of praxis works. So great. So can I just introduce and okay, yay. Well, I am joined here by my two colleagues, Dr. Liza Ireland and Glen Thielmann. Soon to be Dr. Glen Thielmann, because Glen's working on his PhD at UNBC, and I'm happy to say that's coming along. Um, Although, all of us, it takes a while for us all, and then we think, wow, that took a chunk of time, and here we are in this next beautiful chapter of our lives. So I would say these two are really two of my favorite educators in this program, because last summer you came together and you built a residency, a first residency that was just so impactful for students. They really said they had a sense of grounding, an understanding of this program, a real glimpse into systems literacy, and yet they took it outside. They actually understood it from a perspective that it was really real for them, and had takeaways to apply in their work and their life right away. So I guess I'll just start a little bit with Liza and just give a little bit. I've got your bio, so I'm going to read a wee bit if I can, just a
Okay.
tip. But I want to get to your book that you just wrote on ecological principles. So that's something. And then maybe I'll go over to Glen, and then maybe we can open it all up for a little combo. How's that? Okay. Yeah, so your PhD is in education for sustainability, and you've developed systems thinking in education and regenerative sustainability perspectives that incorporate social, economic, environmental imperatives, the three imperatives. You've been the acting program head of this program before, and happily you hired me in 2014 to come and teach EcoPsych, and we've never looked back. You do supervision for our students in both the thesis and the MRP, which is a major research project. That's our lingo for that. You're a curriculum designer and instructor at Cape Breton's University, Masters of Education in Sustainability, Innovation, and Creativity. You have worked at the University of New Brunswick, in China, and the Teacher Training College of Bhutan. You founded the Green School in 1996, an independent elementary school based on sustainability and systems thinking in Scotland. So, you're a world changer, you're a change maker, designation or not. Um, I would just say, Liza, that this book on ecological principles, you and I mean, I can remember about 10, maybe 15 years ago, sitting on the lawn at the castle after we'd been with our students one evening and watched them work in these kind of this nested widening circles process. And we looked at each other and you said, that's nested systems. And I said, it sure is. And you said, I think I'm going to write about this. I think I'm going to do something about this. Like, I'm starting to see how all of not only the content is ecological, but the structure itself
Mhm.
borrows, from the world, from the patterns of the world. So can you speak a bit about how this enters, how you came, what you did with the book, how you came up with the book, what your process might have been like, what some of those key principles are that you bring to your course, EECO 500, uh, developing or deepening an ecological awareness and understanding. And yeah, and why does all that matter? So here we go, the small questions.
Here we
Yeah,
go. Here's my life. Here we go.
here's your life. That's right. Your life in a nutshell, please. Yeah.
Um, uh, um, so speaking about the book,
Yeah.
first of all, it started from when I did the Green School back in 1996. My goodness, that was a while ago now.
Yeah.
And I I saw this wasn't happening, and my kids were young, so I thought it has to happen. I didn't want to see them schooled into the industrial schooling system. And so I started the green school, and I thought I was going to do my PhD first, but the kids needed it now. So I reversed that order and then did my PhD looking at two schools, one school that was based on the industrial, they were a government-run elementary school, and another independent school based on biomimicry. And so looking at that reinforced and was leading really from a question of why aren't we getting anywhere? I've been working in this since the late 70s in outdoor and environmental education, and then sustainability education, running the green school, and looking at our main system of education, which is just reinforcing the status quo and undermining so much
Factory model, the
earlier.
factory model, you know, put them through
Exactly.
batches, right?
Yeah.
Liza, before we go any further, could you say something about biomimicry for people that might not know?
Sure. So I looked at, how biomimicry is looking at and mimicking nature. So nature is designed a sustainable living system. And it's had Deneen Benyus coined the phrase biomimicry in her book at the time, and has the Biomimicry Institute and whatnot. And it's looking at how we can learn from nature. And very interestingly, she came and spoke at a conference, and my brother-in-law is a field biologist, came and said, wow, I've spent my whole career learning about nature, but I've never thought of learning from nature. And it was a huge revelation. And what we're finding is nature's figured all this out, how to be sustainable. And we only need to look to nature to learn how to do that. So that's a big inspiration. And so I looked at what are the principles of these sustainable living systems. And we are really familiar and they resonate with us naturally. And that's interdependence. So everything in nature, if it's sustainable, it works in interdependence and it works in community. And we know we need to reinforce community and diversity. Diversity is a key principle that we also honor. And then it works in cycles and feedback.
Yeah.
And adaptation and emergent learning, such that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And our mechanistic
Emergent
system
properties.
and our mechanistic system has been counter to that. It's been based on top-down plan and impose, separate isolated parts, as if things are not connected. Like when the bell goes, you stop thinking about social studies and now you think about science, and then you stop thinking about that and you think about language. You never see
Oh,
how
and
they
that science is down the hall with some guy in a lab coat, and art is with a woman who has crazy hair down the other hallway, and never the twain shall meet, you know, and the
and
bells
never do.
ring like Pavlov's dogs, and we walk down the hall to the next and the next.
That's right.
So no wonder we get compartmentalized, we get monocropped. Like our
Exactly.
thinking gets monocropped. What we're
Yeah.
trying to do is combine.
Yeah, and we're starting to open and understand that learning happens in reality in an integrated way when you leave that mechanistic system. And kids have that before they come into school. So what we're doing is coming back to helping people learn and really be totally connected in to understand we're part of nature rather than separate from nature, and nature's outside and we are inside. Instead, it's about developing a worldview that resonates with sustainability and helps guide all our actions. Because education can either open us up to be learning and open to understanding the world and how we can improve our ways of being in the world, or it can culture us back into that status quo, which just facilitates a destructive system that we're trying desperately to now deal with and overcome. So we need a new way, and nature's figured it out. So the first part of this course, so back to my book, the book is looking at these ecological principles and how we can totally redesign education, not just curriculum, which teachers are really working brilliantly to do, but they're caught in this mechanistic system. So we need to look at the whole system, looking at administration, teacher training, the whole bit. So that's what the book does.
Well, I
right? And
love that because it isn't just looking at the content. It's like
no,
looking at the whole system. But you can see how that would be a folly that someone might just zero in just on content. We've done that for a long time in EEC.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
just want
teachers
to
have
add,
been doing that and being undermined and
right.
frustrated and leaving the system.
Right, because you're always fighting against that
Yeah.
status quo, which is, a bit of a sick society that wants us to, just adhere to what's already going on without, actually, uh, adapting and emerging into new levels of identity and maturation, that beautiful adaptive
Exactly.
cycle. Two things I just wanted to say, seeing as we're in conversation. The thing about your brother-in-law, it's the same thing happened to me when I started to hear Dave Abram talk about speaking with nature, not just about it. The
Yes.
first time I hung out with him, I don't know, him and Bill Plotkin, I guess it's almost 20 years ago or even longer. And he said to look into, not just at nature. It almost moves science in this beautiful jeweled facet rather than just making it about observing. It becomes participatory. It becomes
And it
responsive.
recognizes we're part of it.
We,
It's not
that's right.
out there.
Yep,
It's
exactly.
and so Hillary, to carry on with this question about structure and how I structured the book, and this comes back into how I teach. Everything is based on these same principles, but it was very important, I felt, to use a framework of backcasting, which is, instead of starting with the problems we've got now and then looking at all the issues and getting stuck in the status quo, we start with a vision of the future. Where do we want to be? And see that. And then we backcast to, okay, what are the challenges we face? And then creative solutions to help get us there and decide on our priorities. So the book does the same. It starts with a vision of what we're looking for in sustainability and learning. And then it looks back at our status quo of the present system. And then the book is full in part two of how do we get there then? How do we move forward? And it weaves in the brilliant research that's also come from our MAEEC students.
Yeah.
And because we're applying these principles
Yeah.
as they move through into the world and what they're doing with it.
Was such a generous act. I think it was just so beautiful to include MAEEC students, and they're ready-made. They're doing this kind of work. I would just say that these days I'm really fond of using the term regenerative sustainability, just because, I was reading Leah Gibbons' wonderful article where she goes out and she scans all of sustainability and what's been written and how far we've come. I think they're calling it the fourth wave now. And included in regenerative sustainability, not just the imperatives, but also the emotional, the spiritual, the relational, the ancestral. All of these parts of ourselves must be included when we're talking about intelligences. And on that
Exactly. And I
note, I can
really
hear
should
my dog barking. Sorry.
I should have renamed. I knew I was not completely happy with my book title of Sustainable Ecological Principles for Sustainable Education. It really should have been Ecological Principles for Regenerative Education.
Yeah. Well, but that's
it's
the
there.
beauty about evolving practice, right?
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
was working with Steve Sterling's foundational work
Oh,
on his work
absolutely.
on sustainable education, recognize its system-wide change. It's not just what happens in a classroom.
Yeah, I adapted his principles for some of my dissertation too. I think he's just
Mhm.
brilliant. Okay, let's
Yeah.
go to Glenn and then we'll come back to you. Okay. Hello, Glenn. Thanks for being patient. So here's Glen Thielmann, a long teaching career in secondary and post-secondary classrooms as a provincial curriculum and instruction leader in social sciences and humanities education. I love this. He's been steadily sinking deep roots into teaching and learning environments, the aliveness of school spaces. Yay! The nature and culture of learning communities. Yay! Connections between knowledge and place, and the acknowledgement that young people have important stories to tell and can themselves become adept storytellers. So Glenn is examining the experience of educators and their students as they navigate the possibilities of place and seek out hope amidst a global polycrisis. Glenn has taught social studies, geography, English. He's taught at SFU, he's taught at UNBC and UBC. You're a lecturer or are you faculty now at UNBC School of Education? I think you're
Both. Yeah.
now, yeah. And you're finishing your PhD and you live up in Prince George.
Mhm.
And yay, Glenn, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me here. Yeah,
I know you stepped out of the classroom.
I did, and then I'm looking across at some Douglas firs on the hillside here outside my office, and
Gorgeous.
it's a nice day. Last time I was here, I think there might still been snow on the ground.
So I just want to say that, often we've talked about in this program when we get together, which is, we want to, but it's hard to do. We talk about how during these difficult times, once students have kind of gone through this program, they seem to have a resiliency. We're still in touch with all of our students as they're into their research. And even though there's a big struggle to get that research done and, to really, come up with purpose and meaning and amidst all of this kind of, it's just like a fire hose of craziness that's going on in the world right now. And yet there's a kind of resilience to people who are systems literate, who understand that these things are cyclical and know how to, adapt and know that, the end of something is not necessarily the end. It can just be the time when something comes through another back loop and another change. And so I'm just curious about your world viewing, Glenn, which to me, it is, I've always understood and learned from you that learning is ecological. But can you give us some examples of how this might play out in your classes and or in your student projects or your own research?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you think about when people are called to do the work they do or the lives they live. Um, it has a shape to it. It has a relationship with the other things around them, the people around them, the places they inhabit. And it's so often, though, that when we get into work, formal work of some kind, there's a system or structure in place that has seemed to predetermine what that shape is supposed to be and how those relationships are supposed to take place. And
Right.
really, Liza's talking about the same thing, in our case, the K to 12, the industrial kind of model of education. But
Mhm.
education has become very sophisticated, and that's what people do. They develop jargon, they develop pedagogies, they develop philosophies, and so on. And I work with teacher candidates now in teacher education, and they're entering a system that is so defined in every aspect that their own identity kind of gets choked off at times. And
Mhm.
so I really believe in kind of arming them with a design mindset from the outset that allows them to bring creativity and relationship into the work they do. And if for nothing else, to just poke fun at the systems around them sometimes by having their own
Yeah.
sense of where that system should go, and
Mhm.
a bit more lighthearted. Everything's so damn serious all the time in education. I think
Yeah.
because the problems are profound.
Yeah.
Um, but I certainly find that, like with my PhD research, is looking at educator practice, teachers that take their kids outside, and why are they doing it, what their motivations are, and the
Yeah.
dynamics they experience. So the challenges, the red tape, the bureaucracy and paperwork, but also the rewards. And what's emerging from the research is that a lot of educators aren't exactly sure why they're doing it. They have different reasons. Some of them are doing it for mental health outcomes, physical health, for to come alongside Indigenous reconciliation or learn what it means to be a land-based educator. Some are
Mhm.
doing it because it's more interesting than what they're doing in the classroom. Some because it's just get some fresh air. So it's creating some structure around this and creating some design mindset around this, I think, is what our program does a great job with. Certainly in my course, the idea is to design for interesting dynamic programs that kind of transcend some of uh, the confines of these systems that we find ourselves in.
Mhm.
I was just looking through a list of the projects that came out of my course the last time around. These were fantastic ideas. Not all of them were end up becoming programs they decide to implement. Some of them have changed their mindsets, but they'll follow up. Things like a nature summer day camp, to taking samples of whale song and creating music with it with K to 12 students.
God,
Um,
I love
Creating
it.
a community-driven plan for small to mid-sized cities so that whole cities can look at what climate resilience looks like.
Mm.
A seasonal 5-day retreat to cultivate resilience and creativity.
Mm.
Um, another one on a program looking at food sustainability to have an actual place-based educational retreat for faculty to develop their curriculum around it and have that based in a food production zone. And a community monitoring project to look at berry health, that we all love healthy berries. Creating pollinator gardens and habitats for pollinators, native flowers as a response to urban land remediation, a homeschooling hub to allow students to design their own relationships with nature through directed studies, and experiential learning for environmental justice, creating a community engagement projects with people who have property out at a recreational lake to understand their experience of place over time. Two more. One was a fellow heading back to Australia to teach who wanted to implement a program of critical pedagogy, which involved a shift, I guess, in the way things were done where he worked. And then the last one was a woman who's trying to use the community engagement around nature walks and citizen science to engage the Catholic Women's League of Alberta. So, I mean, just the diversity. And these are what they came up with in a short period of time, but it was a lot of it based on their hopes and dreams and that kind of grounding that they had going into the work they did. And hopefully, for some of them, they were able to carry that through all the way. But for a lot of them, I think it was kind of giving themselves permission to re-dream those things that they first inspired them to do kind of work they did. And like I said,
Yeah, the permission part.
You
Oh,
can get
sorry.
caught in the block 1, 2, 3, 4 of schools and so on and get dragged in, and it can be enjoyable. But 20 years goes by and you realize that you're not doing what you set out to do.
And
So,
not all our students are teachers either. Like,
exactly.
we have a beautiful mix. We have communicators, consultants, artists. We have all kinds of different types of educators. But this thing you said, Glenn, is so critical. This idea that when you come to grad school, you start to give yourself permission. You give yourself permission to bring the who of you, your power, like Dewey said, here we go back to Dewey, your proclivities, powers, and passions, but bring them in a way that we're actually answering. We're in response to a world that's hungry for something right now. And so we need these deep structures. We need these patterns. We need these ways of, being able to work within those disciplines for our best creativity to happen. And the other thing that I loved what you were saying is how sophisticated this is too. This is not just something we take lightly. This is really pulls on our deepest reserves to do this work. But I'm curious if in your studies, did it come up that teachers really have community around this outdoor education, or want community, or need more community? I mean, you're working with in-service teachers. Are they finding that that they're finding their people, or does it still feel like such an isolated task to teach? Because it can feel really isolating sometimes.
It's certainly a mechanism for that community building.
Yeah.
I've been in this school system for a long time, and I'm glad you point out that, not everyone that ends up in the MEEC program is a teacher. Of those projects I mentioned, there's 15 of them. Only 2 were actual teachers that worked in the K-12 system,
Yeah.
and one was sort of on the periphery, and the other one was in Australia. So, yeah, no, it's a really diverse group. I was certainly refreshing for me because I've spent my entire life working with teachers. But no, I mean, back in the day, the teachers used to have a full hour for lunch and they'd meet in the staff room and play bridge and do different things, and they'd go curling on the weekends and so on. That's gone. And teachers have to struggle to find their people sometimes. But that's such a natural urge that we have as humans to do that. So I definitely see that around a place responsive education, there's teachers that find like-minded individuals. It's what struck me actually about that Take Me Outside conference in Banff as there 2 years ago, was how everyone kind of dropped their guard and saw their own peeps there. And I'm going there again on Wednesday too. So it'll be
Yeah, we had
really
15
see those
people
folks
last
again.
year presenting from MEEC. I mean, and they just glom together in this natural kind of community. I remember Martin Buber, there's a quote out of Martin Buber's work. where he says all meeting is teaching. So really, we're all teaching. You know, if we have you're standing in line in Salt Spring at the grocery store, Liza, and you're having a conversation with someone about something, it's also teaching because we're sharing what we know and not preaching teaching. It's just this beautiful chance to say, hey, let's think about this together. Or have you thought about that? Or nothing like a good question to get things going. Well,
Yeah, that brings in community and diversity and sharing these perspectives and
right.
that's what I wanted to reinforce as well, that although I have a specialty in the K to 12 curriculum, as does Glen, the MAEEC program is really a foundation for education in the world, education in community, and that
Right.
diversity of people who come, everyone is an educator in communicating to people. And so the communicating education is typically non-formal with some formal educators, but what we're doing in the MAEEC program is giving that foundation
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
ecological perspective, which is education that can respond to the needs of the world we're in now, and looking for ways to actually respond.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because I look back at I'm preparing for the summer residency, as are you guys. And I look back at notes, you know, I keep them all from years and years and years. And everything changes all the time. I mean, I collect things all year long that I say, oh, I've got to bring this to the cohort. You know, I've got to bring, oh my goodness, how am I going to fit this reading in? I've got to get rid of another reading. It's just like there's always this incredible dynamic interchange going on. And I think that's also what makes us really happy to teach in this program, is that we're doing our own lives too. You know, it's not something that is outside of who we are either, which is kind of that nested system. And also the cohort model. I mean, I can't talk enough about that. It's really something that's a way to find your peeps too. We find people come and they maybe start with the graduate certificate. They come and do the first 2 or 3 programs, 2 or 3 courses for the GC, and then they convert. They say, oh, I've got to go on and do the diploma, or I got to go on and do the full MA. It happens
Yeah.
all the time because
They say, I don't want to leave. This
people.
is my community.
Yeah. Or we have someone come in from another program just to do a couple electives, and then they say, "Oh, I'm not leaving. You know, how many of my things can you transfer over? Because I'm staying. These are my
Exactly.
people." And I laugh. I think that, you know, we say sorry to our colleagues, but you know, every once in a while. And you know, the cohort model, I think, is really sacrosanct for me because it's really something to travel with your fellows, to travel along. Not only do you bond and form at that first residency, which is critical, and so much of it is, you know, just a deepening, I think, of getting to know each other, getting to know the material, losing the imposter syndrome, starting to really dig in and see themselves as part of this program. But you know, to be able to then go away for a year and do the online work and then come back again at that final second residency, those bookends are just, it's just such a way to fortify
Mhm.
their, you know, their community, their learning
Yeah.
community. And, you know, we do this electronic talking staff, and so that we keep a conversation going very respectfully. And there's one that's 11 years old now. Some of them die out, you know, the cohorts disperse, but one of them is 11 years old now. And boy, did it ever fire up during the pandemic. And it still stays consistent, but it's not overpowering to get too many emails. It's just people checking in their lives, what they've been doing. So we keep in touch in a beautiful way that supports and generates, you know, more work and more learning
Yeah.
for all of us. Yeah.
And so Hillary, that speaks to the power of how Royal Roads runs online courses. Although you leave
Yeah.
the residency, you're still with your cohort in these online courses, and you
Yeah.
know people from the residence. So you know, say, oh, that's that person's sense of humor. He's actually, you know, and that
Right.
person has
Yeah.
that characteristic. So it doesn't seem odd because I know that person now. And
Right.
you've got all that diversity coming into an online environment. You're not alone out there just working on a computer. You're
Right.
interacting, you're working on projects.
Yeah.
And as you started off saying, we've been doing this for over 25 years. I think we've got the best example of how to do this. And we've got this huge IT department that support really creative curriculum design
Oh,
in an
yeah.
online learning environment. So But as you say, getting together and knowing each other in residence right away, and then coming back after being from your distant places, you come back and go, yay, here we are. Wasn't that funny when?
Yeah, you're right. You know, if you don't have some of that early face-to-face in person, you can take things wrong. You know, when you
Yeah.
get a post that seems a little bit maybe, you know, maybe it's acerbic or maybe it's a little bit sharp or something, you can just say, oh, well, that's just the way that she speaks. I remember that. Ah, ha, ha, ha. You know, like
Yeah.
it really diffuses an awful lot. And there's so much team building that goes on in those early residencies. I mean, really, people just change over that 3 weeks. They just change.
Mhm.
And yeah, they start to really soften and ground, and then their trajectory, they're on their way. And every cohort is unique.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say every single cohort has its own kind of, you know,
Yeah. That's the
specificity.
diversity we're speaking of, right? That's
Right.
really recognizing and culturing that diversity is okay, and we need to sing for who we are
Yeah.
in community, which is really brilliant.
Glenn, when you came here last year to teach for the first time, how did you see this place helping with that shaping that you were talking about? You know, the places that you visited with your class, the cedars and the firs. You know, did that have anything to do with how your curriculum shaped? And
Well, definitely. Yeah. I mean, personally, it was lovely to be there. I'd been to the campus before, but never for that prolonged period of time. And our school is kind of poised between upslope was old growth Douglas fir forest, and downslope were these tended manicured gardens and vestiges of colonial wealth in Vancouver Island, and then interspersed with more modern iterations and relationships with the land, the indigenous garden, and so on. So it's yeah, lots of places to explore, lots of ways of expressing our relationship with the earth that were present. And Liza and I had a chance to teach at least half of our classes outside. Plus, the classrooms we did have these full opening walls that go out to an outdoor learning space. So we had a lot of fresh air. I think we all had tans, and it was no, it was good work. And I mean, online learning can be brutal for some people. I've never, I don't mind teaching online, but learning online can be really challenging. So to have those residencies, it kind of provides context for everything, as Hillary said, and develops some relationship. And it's the best program for a lot of people who have jobs and who can't afford to take a year off to attend in person somewhere. So it's a lovely compromise. And the experiential part, it's intense, but it's manageable and it's enjoyable. And Liza and I certainly collaborated a lot last year to weave what was happening between mornings and afternoons, and the assignments all kind of made sense together. There was nothing that was sort of pulling them in different directions. They all working towards their own goals and exploration of the material we'd put together. So yeah, I'd certainly recommend the program to not just K to 12 educators, but yeah, anybody who's looking to do more with their environmental connections and communication.
yeah, yeah.
Great program.
And if I could speak to reinforcing how we were teaching, as Glenn just said, we really work together, and we've already had our conversation of how we're going to collaborate this summer coming up, and looking at how our assignments are collaborative and more from one and apply into the other. And so I think, is it 4 or 5 assignments are collaborative between the two courses, showing the
Oh, that's
synergy
great.
between ecological grounding and curriculum design. And that's curriculum design in all facets of non-formal and formal education, as Glenn mentioned, in the kind of projects that came out of this residence. And so
One of the best comments was that your residency was considered one course. I heard students say, "Oh, the course with Glenn and Liza." I was like, well, that was 2 courses. But yeah,
exactly.
that was a great
So
compliment. Anyways,
that is lovely.
yeah.
Because, and again, we were talking about biomimicry, and we were mimicking these ecological principles I live by, or we all live by intentionally or no, but so we were looking at how interdependent our courses are, how we could really create community really quickly and effectively so people feel at home and they're just really
Mhm.
there working collaboratively. And of course, diversity was, we would give students, what do you want to do? How do you want to apply this? And a lot of choice, total choice in the projects and the kind of things they want to, how they want to apply.
Which unleashes creativity. And you know what else, when you're talking about diversity, and I know we got to wrap it up because we got to get to the details part of this, but you know, I was just struck by the ages too. Like we have such a vast range of young, quite beautifully young folks that are also incredibly sophisticated and you know, knowledgeable. And then this group of older folks, which is so wonderful. We've got this span of life experience that is just like, I just love how that it's not just one sort of small target group. Kind of makes the marketing people go nutty, but you know, we attract a real range of people.
And that brings in experience and diverse attitudes. We had people from all parts of Canada bringing their regional kind of perspectives.
And religions, different religions.
Yep, and all sorts of things into play in the discussions. And how do they develop place responsive and world-changing kind of programming that they wanted to bring out. Okay. But I wanted to say before we do that, Glen and I have worked so well together in taking student feedback. So when we are in residence learning and adapting, constantly applying these principles, given how the students are responding. And so we really are trying to model emergent learning so that we're bringing these courses forward, and we're not sure where they're always going to go because it depends on what kind of feedback we get so that we can adapt and emerge according to what the students
I'm with you. So we're not just responding to world, we're responding to our students in the moment, in that emergent properties that come up during the program. We say, we know we have to get to there, but how we're going to heuristically get there is going to be up to who shows up and how this plays out. Well, that's the skill and the passion and the real love of people who are called to teach. I mean, you have to love what you do and love the students and love the content to be able to be in that kind of swirl of it. But yay. Okay. Well, I guess we better get to the administrative part. We have to tell people how they might apply if they're interested in coming. But I just want to say thanks, Liza and Glen. I know, Glen, you're teaching, so if you have to hive off, I'll just say thank you now, and I'll see you in the summer. And Liza, too, thank you so much for your time. You guys are both amazing. And if you'd like to stay on, feel free. But we'll carry it from here. And I hope we have more conversations this summer. Yeah.
It's great. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, Ariana, here we go. Program overview. So we've been just talking about how this program is blended. We use that terminology. So there's early residencies online and then a second residency at the end. And the residencies are on campus with one of the second year residency. The first part is in a field school up in the Broughton Archipelago, but we'll get to that. Yeah. Right. And there's many paths to this program. It's kind of beautifully designed that you could start with the first 3 courses as a graduate certificate in environmental education and communication. The full coursework is considered the diploma in environmental education and communication, or the full Masters of Arts is when you've done all your coursework and you've added the research component. And there's 2 choices for that we'll come to. Here we go. So again, the format is a blend of distance and face-to-face. The first certificate is 3 months, 3 courses, 9 credits. The diploma is 1 year, all coursework, 24 credits. And the MA is 2 years and a little bit, 36 credits, and it includes either a final thesis or a major research project and an elective. The major research project doesn't have a defense, and it only has a supervisor, not a committee. And it's only 9 credits, and the elective is the 3, makes up the 3, because the thesis is a 12. So you have to make up that 12 final credits. The thesis does have, of course, a supervisor and at least 1 committee member and a defense at the end of it. There's 2 residencies, as we said. If you're just coming for the certificate or the diploma, or the certificate, you're only going to 1 residency. If you're coming for the diploma or the full MA, you'll be doing 2 residencies. Yeah. Those are pictures of our students jumping on the beach. The courses, just briefly, because we don't have a lot of time and you can find this all online. The two we were talking about today, a deepening ecological awareness and understanding, is what Liza teaches. And 508, learning theory and program design, is what Glen was talking about. And these two come together for the first residency. And then the third course in the certificate is the Foundations for Environmental Communication. Just a real taste of everything you'll be learning in depth throughout the whole program. That's the certificate. Then the diploma includes a systems course, which is taught by another amazing faculty member, all award-winning faculty members. I think, 5 of our 8 faculty have all won teaching awards, just amazing. And that fellow has been our MAEEC student in the past, did his PhD in Kingston, and now he's back teaching for us. Approaches to research in environmental ed and communication is taught by a retired Royal Roads prof from the Communications and Culture School, Virginia McKendry. It's fantastic. We use a process there called clean language, which was invented by a Maori educator and psychologist named David Groves. And it's a beautiful way to ask deeper and deeper questions till you come up with some beautiful research questions and you're very clear on what it is you want to know. We have worldviews in ethics, environmental ethics, with Bob Cull, Dr. Bob Cull, who's been with us for many years, and he's really a wonderful educator and a great writer. And then the field school is the Biosphere and Sustainability course, which is 1 week up in the Broughton Archipelago with Dr. Ashley Akins, who is a National Geographic explorer, and she has her own field school in Peru. And so she's just amazing. And Jason, our systems perspectives facilitator, comes and accompanies for field school. And then you come back for 2 weeks on campus to me, and I teach ecopsychology at the intersection of theory and practice. And we do a lot of reading, but we also just read the world. We also spend a lot of time immersed on the land. There's field trips there, and there's lots of arts-based learning, and just really quite a beautiful way to end our learning in the program before you go off and do your research, which is either the thesis or the major research project and an elective. That's a mouthful. Okay. Right. So this is you, Ariana. Yep.
Totally. Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks, Hillary.
Okay.
And of course, thanks to Liza and Glenn. That was fantastic. So I'll give us a few details on how to apply. So if you are thinking of joining us for the upcoming intake or any future intakes, you know what to do. So at Royal Roads, we have 2 methods of admission. We have standard admissions, and there's also flexible admissions. So you'll see the standard admissions requirements on the screen, which look like a 4-year or comparable undergrad degree with a minimum GPA of a B from a recognized post-secondary institution with at least 2 years of relevant work or volunteer experience. If you meet the degree requirement, but not the GPA requirement, you may be required to take academic writing and critical thinking and obtain a final grade of a B. Hillary, do you have anything to add before I move on?
Well, that's a great course, that academic writing and critical thinking. I can't say enough about it. We created it in continuing studies way back when to just address the fact that academic writing is different than other kinds of writing. And you could be a great poet, but it doesn't mean you're an academic writer. And so it just doesn't make sense to struggle with writing and with writing the assignments. It's great to struggle with the content and what you're really learning, but not with just the writing itself. So it's just a great way to equip yourself and learn some of these techniques and tools, before you jump into graduate studies. And I can just say anyone who takes it is, at first they're like, oh, but then they're very thankful at the end. And, we kind of recommend it to anyone who's been out of school for a while. Yeah. And there's many iterations of it that run over the year. I think there's 6 or 7 of them that run out of continuing studies.
Yeah.
But, and the other thing with any of these admissions things we're talking about today, and Ariana will agree, if you're unsure, put it all down on paper and talk to one of our admissions people, because, we're interested in who you are. Yes, what you've done, but also who you are and what you're looking toward. And so we want to look at the combinations of many different things that your life experience brings, as well as your work, your volunteer experience, and your passions. Yeah.
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 Totally. It's a beautiful way of describing it. Speaking of which, we also have flexible
There we
admission.
go.
Yay.
Yeah. Oh, there's some of the art projects from my class. That's excellent.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to speak about this?
Totally, yeah. So,
Okay.
like Hillary mentioned, if you do not meet the standard admissions requirements, normally the criteria is 6 years of relevant work experience, or a combination of education and experience, or a combination of post-secondary and qualifications. There's so many ways that these things can be combined. So it is, of course, assessed on a case-by-case basis. There's the note about the academic writing and critical thinking as well. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot of different ways that folks can apply, and they come from all different avenues, as we've been chatting about today. So anything to add there?
I think the next screen will say the pieces of this that are important to bring right, because and we know always official transcripts have to come from the schools or from the institutions that granted them. But this personal statement, the detailed resume and the personal statement, I can't say enough about how important it is, that we can read where you've come from, even if you've had a rough undergrad, maybe you were just young and partying and you didn't, get the marks you wanted. Just, tell us where you're at now. Tell us what's going on. Tell us what you want to do. Tell us what's happened to you in the meantime. Like that personal statement is really gold. So pour yourself into it. And that detailed resume, put on all the things you've done that are volunteer and in the community. And you think maybe that doesn't apply, but it does apply. Even your interests apply there. But maybe you want to speak about the transcripts and the letters there, Ariana.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you covered most of it, Hillary. But the other things, of course, are official transcripts, like Hillary mentioned, from post-secondary. If you have those, bring them in. And 2 letters of reference, they can either be academic or professional in nature, whatever combination, makes
But
sense for
just
you.
not your best friends writing letters.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. But the other thing is, as I understand it, because the way our process works is, we're past our deadline now. I think that's the next screen.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll
I
move
think we're
that
past our
forward here.
deadline, but there's still time. So if you get your you start your application and you start getting those documents together, you don't have to wait to get them all together to apply. Just start with the application fee and then start sending in the documents. That way you're in the hopper. That way we know you're coming and we can start to look for you. So
Yeah.
there is still time, even though we've passed the deadline, but you'd have to get really on it now. It would have to happen now. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. It's hard to
Yeah.
believe we're already in May, but
I know.
yeah.
I
Starting in
know.
July.
But we still have time. We once had someone come in like just by the skin of her teeth, and
Yeah.
she ended up just doing an amazing thesis that they're using in the Indigenous Studies program now at UVic, and she did a
Wow.
TEDx talk. And I mean, that was just the right move for that person to come in, and we just made it happen.
Totally.
There's a lot in the process, so we want to respect the system and all the good teams here at Royal Roads that work together to make this happen. And we're always willing to consider someone who is really keen on coming if we can get this process going,
Yeah.
soon. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're looking ahead to the future, also, there's some dates in 2026. So if you're thinking, for yourself for next year, also possible.
Yeah.
You can be in touch with us and start your application anytime for 2026 if you'd like.
That's right.
Okay, some services that are available to you. So if you are curious about those, we have several. Financial aid and award services, of course. We have different financial resources. You'll see the list on the screen. There's many others. So loans, bursaries, scholarships, student research, emergency funding, all sorts of things that's available. Really fantastic team. But
Yes.
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 Yeah,
Amazing
totally.
people. We have amazing people at Royal Roads who
Yeah,
all really want to provide an excellent experience for students. I
yeah.
mean, really a caring place. That's part of one of our tenets, one of our strongest motivators is our caring for our students. It's really evident. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Fantastic. Speaking of fantastic people, also enrollment services, wonderful group of folks. So if you have questions comments, anything like that, and you want to know
Yeah.
more, learn.more@royalroads.ca. That's the email. And then there's some phone numbers for local and for toll-free for North America on the screen. So if you are looking at this program, or you have any questions and you want to narrow down like your options, you want to talk about your application, you want to be connected with, program heads like Hillary or students or alumni, anything, they can really make those connections for you.
We do that all the time. Like
Yeah.
I speak to people all the time. And also this last couple of weeks, I provided 4 or 5 alum and current students to prospective students, and they're both applying because they just heard it from the students themselves. And so that was the thing that really helped them to hear it from someone who's in the program or just finished the program. So our alum and our students are most willing to speak about their experiences. But yeah, and you get a real person on the phone when you call. This is
Totally. Always helpful,
right.
right?
That's right. Not a
Always
virtual
helpful.
person, a real
Yeah.
person. Yeah.
And then this,
Oh, this is
Hillary.
one of our wonderful students and our Mary Oliver quote, because this is just so important at the end of this program. It's always our dream and our hope that people are clearer on how they might bring their own particular gifts in service to the world in response to what the world needs. So this beautiful part of Mary Oliver's poem, The Summer's Day, she says at the end, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" So that's just a beautiful way to kind of end our time together. And look at our time, Ariana. We have done this,
Wow.
right? I know. It was really great to be with you today. And I'm so grateful you're going to be in Banff this weekend to
Yeah.
represent us.
Yeah,
You
me
know
too.
about this program now. You've been on enough of these webinars.
Sure
I can hardly wait
do.
till you come and do the program.
Yeah. I always think when I do webinars with programs like this, I might just end up recruiting myself. So you never know. Maybe I'll see you there.
Now that's funny. That would have to be a calm story for sure.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, well, that's it. And thanks again, Liza. And thanks everyone for who's going to be clicking through. And thanks, Lawrence, for joining us. And thanks again, Ariana, and to Glenn. Yeah, thanks, Liza. It's so good to see you. Yeah, any final word from you?
Absolutely none. You guys have covered it all so well.
Well,
I'm
thank
looking
you.
forward to meeting all sorts of new people.
Yeah, me too. We're going to have a great summer. Okay, thanks so much, Ariana.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay,
Enjoy your
bye,
day.
everybody. Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. Bye-bye.